Hello, and welcome back to the Git Basic series. Today is part 2, the Git commands that I use daily and the ones that everyone should know. If you appreciate this video and want to keep seeing more like this, then please do me a favor and click the subscribe button down below and click the like button. That really helps the channel grow. It lets YouTube know that you enjoy our content, and most importantly, you will be notified of any upcoming releases. So the objective of this video is I'm going to teach you 9 new things. There's probably going to be a lot of terms that you've never heard before, and so I'm going to go ahead and list out these terms so you can download them from our GitHub repository. So, and we'll discuss some more in this video. So don't get discouraged or don't get intimidated, because I will make sure that you understand everything before the end of this video. So in this video, we're going to create a new Git project. We're going to clone a repo to your local environment. We're going to create a new branch, check the status of your project, check out a branch, pull the latest information from your repository, make a change to your file and add those files to the stage, commit those files and add a descriptive message to the commit, and push your changes to your remote repository. Now, like I said, there's probably a lot of terms that you didn't know in what I just said, so I'll go over each individual term throughout each objective. So let's start with the very first objective. The first objective we're going to want to do is create a new project in a folder. What I'm going to want to do is start with a fresh folder structure. So I'm going to go ahead and come out here and we'll delete projects. I have all of mine in sites personally, but you can do it really anywhere. And in this case, I'm going to go ahead and create a new one called projects. Open this up and I'll create another one. And let's call this one Chronicle Codes. All right. Now, what we're going to want to do is create a new project, and we're going to want to do that inside of a terminal. If you're using a Mac, then you're going to want to open up the application terminal. But since I'm on a PC, the one that is built into PCs is Windows PowerShell. So I'm going to go ahead and open up PowerShell. So now we're going to want to go deeper into the projects folder. So we're going to go ahead and change directory and go into projects. So then inside of here, I can just use Chronicle Codes. And now I am inside here. Now, what we're going to want to do to create a new project is the git init command. And there you see, by doing commands inside of PowerShell, you'll see that the folder got created inside of here. And that's really the first objective. You created your first Git project. And this is how you would start a new project if you didn't have already a Git folder in place. The second thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to clone a repo to our local environment. Now, if you're cloning a repo, you don't necessarily have to go through this process. It will work, but let's go ahead and just remove this so you can see that it works either way. So now if I go over to GitHub and we go over to this repository with the Git Basics, then you'll see a couple of buttons over here, one that's called code. And I'm going to talk about the difference between cloning and forking in the next video, but in this video, we're going to want to clone this repository. So you can either click in this one and press Control-C or right click to copy, or you can just click on this button over here and it also copies the entire link. Now note that because you're not a member to this repository, you're not going to be able to actually push changes to this repository, but that's what the next video is going to be, with finding out how you can push changes to repositories that you don't have access to. So since we have the link, let's go back into our terminal, and I'm going to open up the folder structure so you see this also. I'm going to use the second command, git clone, and then I'm going to paste the URL. And you'll see that with that command, it copied everything from that website, and there's my Git folder that we tried to create earlier, and we have the files that exist on GitHub. So if I were to go over to GitHub, you'll see these are the 2 files that exist. Typically what I like to do is I like to have all of my repos inside of my main project folder. So really what I would want to do is, let's get rid of this one, and we're going to move up one level. So now we're in the projects folder, and I'll clone it inside of here. And really, you can do a folder inside of a folder. It's really however you want to organize your project, but this is how I would want to personally do my folder structure. Now that we have the repo cloned, what does that actually do? To actually view any of this, let's go ahead and download Visual Studio Code. Just go to Google and type in VS Code. Then you're going to have options, and this is something that is available for both Mac and PC. But you're going to go ahead and click this button to download your version of VS Code and go ahead and go through the installation process. Now that we have Visual Studio downloaded, let's talk a little bit about it. Visual Studio in its most basic form is a text editor. It's a powerful application that almost every developer that you'll run into has installed on their machine. Like I said, this is something that is available for both Macintosh and for Windows. And so you'll see almost every developer with this application. There are some other competitors that exist out there. And so some people do prefer other IDEs and other text editors. But for what we're going to be doing, let's go ahead and use VS Code. Now, the first thing that we're going to want to do is open up the folder that has the Git Basics on here. So let's go ahead and go to my projects and Git Basics. And now that we're here, you see that none of the folders are here, none of the files are here, and that's because we are selecting a folder. So now that we have the folder that we want, let's go ahead and select that. You might get this pop up, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Yes, I trust the authors. Here you'll see all the files that exist, and you can click through them. This is really the ability to open up your file and make any edits to it. But that's really the second objective, is just cloning a repo. And we even did a little bit of bonus because now we were actually seeing what's inside of the repository. Now, how I mentioned earlier that there's a way that you can access your terminal through the application, Visual Studio actually allows for us to make terminal commands inside of this application. So if you actually go up here to View and you click on this terminal, then you'll actually be able to have it viewable. And this is the same thing as running PowerShell over here. And you'll know this because up here you have PowerShell. So now with the third objective, we're going to want to create a new branch. But first, let's see what branches already exist. So if I type git branch, then you'll see that I have my main branch. So inside of Git, how I explained in the previous video, what is powerful about Git is that you can create multiple versions. So if I were to want to make some changes to this without altering this main branch, then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to branch off into a new section. The way you can do that is you can do git checkout B, and that's going to be for branch. And let's just call this test branch. Okay, so now if I type git branch, there's my branch right there. You see that there's two of them that exist right here. So that's really the third objective, is creating a new branch. So what's very powerful about it is that now that I'm off to a new branch, let's say I wanted to make a change right here, and we're just going to make it test. I'm going to click this little icon over here so I can see your preview. And there's my test right there. So let's say we have this test right here, and I'll do a couple things that I'll go over here in a little bit. So if I wanted to make any changes here but not alter the original branch, I can go and check out. And since I'm not creating a new one, I'm going to leave off the B flag, the branch flag, and I'm just going to check out the main. And you'll see that my change isn't there. So what happened to it? That all exists inside the branch that we made the changes. So we'll do a checkout of the test branch. And there's my changes. So that's how you create a new branch. And if we were to check the status of this, then really it's just going to be git status. And there's nothing to commit. We're on a working clean tree. But if I were to undo some of the things that I did before switching over and click on status again, you'll see that there are changes that need to be committed. And basically what it's telling me is that I have an uncommitted file. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, there's going to be a list of terms that are foreign to you. So if you stick around to the end, then you'll see that there's going to be a section where I go over the terms that we mentioned in this video. You can also just click on the chapter icon down below where it says terms, and that'll get us straight to all the new terms that we introduced in this video. So now we have created a new Git project, we've cloned the repo, and we've created a new branch, and we've checked the status of the branch. So let's talk about checking out a branch. Now, you kind of saw where I was going back and forth between branches right over here. So if we pull up our GitHub again, right here, you'll see that there's a thing called 3 branches. And if I were to click on here, it also tells me all the branches that exist. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on here, and you'll see that I have a part 1 and a part 2 branch. So let's go click back. If I were to click on part 1, here's how I have the README file for this. If I click on part 2, here's a different README file. So let's see how we can check out these inside of our Visual Studio application. As you saw, if I click on Git branch, then it's only going to show these. If we want to go to the part 1 branch, then really all you have to do is do git checkout and do part 1. Keep in mind that the terminal is going to be case sensitive, so you have to copy it exactly how I have here. So I have capital P, I have a hyphen with the letter 1. So I'm going to do git checkout part 1. And there you go. Now I have all the files that are from this repository branch. And I can see that if you click on the icon up here, you'll see that this is very much the same as what exists over here. You'll see that part 2 is not one of the listed branches that is available. We can still check out that branch because it does exist on the remote repository. So we'll do git checkout part 2. And there you go. Now we have all the code that is from the part 2 branch. So I went ahead and made a change to the repository. So what I did is similar to what you'll experience in the workforce, is that you'll hop onto your project, but you won't know that somebody made a change to the project. It's good to start getting in the habit of doing a pull before you get started, because you're going to pull all the information, but that's where git status really comes in handy. So if I were to type git status, then you'll see that right now we are behind. This branch that we have locally is behind the part 2 by 1 commit. So the way that you can get all that information is by just doing a git pull. And there you have it. I created just a test over here. Now it's being shown inside of my text. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And there you have it. My change is now appearing in my files. Like I mentioned earlier in this video, since you don't have access to the GitHub repository Git Basics, I'm going to show you in the next video how you can fork it to make these changes. But this is how you would be pushing changes to the repository. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the change, which was test. I'm going to go ahead and save it. What I'm going to want to do is go ahead and add this. So what's nice about Visual Studio code is that if you click on the plus sign, that is going to do the add. But what we're going to want to do is git add, and let's go ahead and do the file of README. So now we have that file that was staged. You'll see now if I hover over it, it's the minus sign. So basically doing this command is the same thing as just clicking the plus sign for this particular file. So it's a nice little shortcut. So the next thing we're going to want to do is commit this file. So really whenever you commit a file, what you're doing is that you're preparing it to be deployed onto the branch. And so what I mean by that is that if I were to go to here to my commits, then you'll see that I have messages, and these are all individual commits that I have pushed to this branch on part 1. And if I were to go over to part 2, you'll see these are all the individual updates that I've done to just this commit. So I'm going to want to do is commit this, and I'm going to show the terminal way first. So I'm going to do git commit, and I'm going to put in my message, revert changes. I'm putting it inside these quotations so it will be appeared as a message. And so now I have committed my change. You see that it went away from here and it went into being ready to be deployed. The other way that you can do it, if I undo this, is that I can, and it already copied my message here, but you can put in a message right here, and then you can click on commit. And that is your 8th objective, is to commit. So the final thing that you're going to want to do is actually push those up, because like if you see, I'm going to refresh my screen. My changes aren't up yet, but they are ready. They're basically somewhere where they're ready to be pushed up. So if I were to actually just press git push, everything is now getting pushed to my GitHub repository. So if I were to refresh over here, there are my changes, revert changes. And if I wanted to see the actual file, I can click on these 3 dots, click on view file. And here's the file with the updated code that I had where I just removed the test. And if I were to go back to Git Basics, go to part 2, you'll see that my changes have been pushed up. Now for the terms that we went over in today's video, if you go to our GitHub repository and then go to our part 2 branch, scroll down to the bottom. I'll leave a link for this inside the video, but if you go to the terms section, these are some of the words and terms that we used in today's video, which really come straight from the Git glossary, and I'll leave a link for this also. And I just went ahead and picked out the terms that we used in this video, but we went over a Git branch, which is really the different versions of code that you have inside of your repository. We went over checkout, which was the command that allows you to check out a different branch. We went through commit. We didn't really go over the term as a noun, but we really used it as a verb, the action of committing something. And I'll go over in a future video on what it means to use commits as a noun. We went over the action of pulling, and that was whenever we would pull from the remote repository to the working repository. We went over push, which is the action of pushing from your stage to the remote repository. And we went over repository, which is really just a project. And we also mentioned forking, which forking is what the next video is going to be about, the action of getting a repository. And there's 2 ways that you can get a copy of a repository. The one that we did today is the git clone. And the next video, we're going to talk about the git fork. So that concludes today's video. So as always, keep up the good work, and we'll see you in the next one.